Now, when you create your story, um, you are connecting. You are trying to connect to the people. You are giving them a means of connection. Let's have something at the center of it so that everybody is connected to it. This is why the story always work. Now, whether you are talking of people, our ancient ancestors who had to sit around the fire and tell story, it's because there is something that connect the people. That is why it is done even in the advanced stages today in marketing. Talk of the biggest storyteller in the world today, particularly within the area of marketing. It's the same thing. Something that everybody can identify with.
Yes,
And the
yeah.
secret of this is emotion because we are sort of tickling with the emotion of the people. So
Mm-hmm.
that we made them cry, so that we made them laugh. But that is why it works. That is why it is important. So
Mm-hmm.
the question really is, how do you use emotion in your storytelling? Let me
Mm.
understand that.
So for me, one of the things that is important is to draw my reader into this story. The reader must either be able to see themselves in situations with those characters, or they must be able to empathize with the characters, really feel the conflicts that the characters go through, and the dilemmas that they face. And I use a number of different techniques um, to accomplish that. Like I said, there are a number of themes and topics that are universal. Everybody feels love, um, wherever you are, wherever you come from. There is that experience of love in one form or another as part of life. And therefore, one of the key ways to help to draw people into stories is to just by writing about things that common themes and topics or issues, things that people will understand just because they've experienced it. And I think that's when the craft comes in, because you could write something um, about love and not really move anybody depending on how you write about it. So for me, for example, in How the One Armed Sister Sweeps Her House, there are a number of different things, that a number of techniques, but I'll give you one. For example, um, one more than one chapter in the novel is written from different perspectives, and in one chapter I use the second person you in writing this chapter. And that technique means that it's simultaneously Lala talking from a like a disassociative state, disembodied. So the trauma that she has gone through has almost caused a fracturing of self. And it is as if she is talking about some of the what she has gone through from another part, from outside of herself. So that's one thing that happens by using that technique. But what also happens is that the text then directly addresses the reader. So by saying you are walking down the road and you come across this and this is how you feel, it is a direct address to the reader, an invitation and invocation for the reader to place him or herself within what that character is experiencing in that chapter. And if it's done well, and again, there that is the craft of it. If it's done well, that is exactly what happens. The reader is transported into that character's experience and identifies with it so closely that they come away from the text changed in some way, moved in some way, thinking about a question that has been raised by this story, and hopefully something that will sufficiently impact them individually, that will lead to them changing and their wider community changing, and then eventually the wider world. And I really genuinely believe that, and believe that is possible. I mean, so many of us can think about books that we've read, um, after which we were never the same. The person that we were going into that story is not the person we are when we leave it. And I think those are the best books. So for me, one of the ways that I use emotion and that I try to get the reader into the text is by addressing the reader directly, by using that second person. Um, in writing. So that's one way, but there are a number of others. I mean, in my tradition, and I say my tradition as a Caribbean person, but also as a member of the African diaspora, because I understand that this is part of my ancestry and my history. Um, the oral tradition in terms of storytelling and a circular um, method of telling stories that I grew up with. This is one of the ways that I try to make my readers feel something. So, for us in the Caribbean, for example, if I'm telling you the story of an accident that happened down the road, I will tell you, yes, this accident happened in front of Blade's house yesterday evening. You know Blades, right? He's a neighbor that lived across the road that had a little young girlfriend that used to come over on Saturdays. Now, when I'm telling you the story of the accident, but to better tell you that story, I have to tell you the story of the neighbor in front of whose house that accident occurs. By the time I've told you all of those surrounding stories, they're little circles. When I see them in my mind, it's like they're little circles in themselves. And where the current story emerges is where all those circles intersect. And to me, that's part of our tradition. And that's something that's distinguished from a tradition of more linear storytelling where the story starts at a particular time and it progresses in a linear fashion towards its end. That's not the way that we tell stories in the Caribbean generally. That's not the way I understand my ancestors have told stories. And that is one of the traditions that I utilize in my stories. And by the time I've told you those little circles, by the time I've told you those separate stories, you care about the people in those stories. So when we intersect now for the main story, hopefully you'll care a little bit more. So that may be a little abstract way of saying it, but that is one of the techniques that I use as well. Some people have said, but in How the One Armed Sister Sweeps Her House, I yes, it was a story mainly about Lala and some of the challenges she faces, but it was also a story about Wilma, and it was a story about Esme, and it was a story about Tone, and I had to tell you enough of those other stories for you to care about those characters